Well, welcome. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I'm with Virginia Community Capital, and welcome to our new knowledge session today. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time, especially welcome. We've been doing this for the past almost 10 years. It's a way we started out to support the Washington County Business Challenge, and we wanted to continue having that networking opportunity, but especially that professional development learning. And we've continued on, and we do between 20 and 22 workshops a year. And we're excited to have a great lineup. And you're going to meet one of those in just a second. But this is a collaborative effort with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and the town of Abington, as well as Virginia Community Capital. Just a little housekeeping. Today's session is being recorded for education and training purposes, and it will be available online at the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator's Facebook page. But we also have a new knowledge channel on YouTube, so just go there and you can check it out. Also, to keep the webinar flowing, we do have everyone muted. However, I know that our presenter today wants your questions because this is a workshop and we're here to help you. So if you have a question, please post those in the Q&A section and we will address those at the end of the session. I'm delighted to welcome Stephen Longstaff with Longstaff Creative with us today. This is Stephen's first time with us. Stephen's coming to you today from Richmond. Thank goodness he's not on the pole like Green Acres, and he can you can see him speaking. But Stephen brings over 30 years of experience producing and designing solutions that engage and inspire, creating an identity, which is the most important part of all of us that we're doing in our organizations, either nonprofit or for-profit businesses. So Stephen's going to share with you some tips on when you are designing and looking at your logo. So please welcome Stephen Longstaff.
Thanks, Sandy. Really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here today and share some of my experience in the design world. Just a little bit of history of myself. I started Longstaff Creative back in 1992. And when I started the business, I really tried to focus on organizations and companies that meant something to me that I wanted to partner with. So I started out doing a lot of work with nonprofit organizations, the YMCA, United Way. I work with Children's Hospital of Richmond. I also work with a lot of small businesses and also some corporations as well. I find the work very rewarding. And when Sandy invited me to come and speak with you guys today, I really thought hard about what I could share that I thought was beneficial and something that's important to me. And logo design is that thing. It's one of the things that I'm passionate about. I've done a lot of different designs over the years, and just being able to share something with you that is probably one of my favorite things to do in design. I like to do all types of work, but this is one of them. So I'm just going to start out here. I've got a deck here to share with you. And like Sandy said, if you guys have any thoughts or questions, we can try to address those at the end. But if there's something really pressing, don't hesitate. I'm sharing my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that all right. And this is my, hello?
You're good on this end.
Okay, cool. This first title slide is a portion of my logo. And when I did my logo, one of the things that I love about doing design work is I love baseball is one of my passions. And so I was thinking about, the next pitch. Can I hit the next pitch? And how can I make that, really work? And so, and I also like really bold graphic design. So that's me when I had hair. And, so it's just the next challenge. Each client has a different need. And, just like in baseball, you don't know what you're going to get with the next pitch. So that's kind of where that came from. I wanted to kind of start out talking with you guys by sharing just a little bit of a history of logo design, just to kind of get things started. So I'm going to share a video here with you all.
Think of a burger joint. You got it? We don't know you. We don't even know what country you live in. But we're sure that this crossed your mind. We don't have to tell you what this symbol means, or this one, or this one, or this one, or, well, you know what we mean. We have to live with the constant presence of brands from the moment we're born. They invaded our public lives decades ago. Thanks to digital technology, they've reached every last corner of our private lives. Every one of them has a visual identity, a logo. Logos primarily have one practical goal. We use a symbol, font, or even a color to sum up the whole meaning of a brand. But of course, they're much more than that too. Why do we connect with some logos so deeply? To start answering this question, you've got to go way back. A lot further than you think. Since the beginning of humanity, we've been using symbols to represent complex realities. The Christian cross appeared more than 2,000 years ago. Can it be considered a brand? What about the Jewish Star of David or the Islam Star and Crescent? All of these have one of the essential features of modern brands: their ability to refer to something intangible, impossible to convey with words, but that we associate with a type of behavior, a way of living and being. For sales, a lot of brands use messages about personal improvement and a sense of community, traditionally associated with spiritual worship. Because it's all about selling. Getting the client to associate positive values with your brand. And we've been doing this for centuries. They've found ceramics in very different civilizations, like in China and the Aztec and Roman empires, with marks that refer to basic symbols. And let's not forget about masons' marks, symbols that these professionals etched onto their work that can still be seen today. Using these marks, different stonemason guilds stated their origin, the type of route that they worked on, or how experienced they were. In Europe and Asia during the Middle Ages, a society was separated into different classes: the nobility, the clergy, and peasants. Starting in the 10th century with the establishment of the orders of chivalry, a practical problem came up. Knights, covered in armor from head to toe, were unrecognizable on the battlefield and in tournaments. So they began decorating their shields with symbols and colors to differentiate them from everyone else. This is how heraldic arts emerged, that over the course of centuries would also come to define the network connected to these knights, their squires, wives, properties, territories. Heraldry would move on to commercial brands in their capacity to create a sense of belonging to a human group, a feeling of familiarity. Some of the first European trademarks came from family crests, as is the case of the office supply brand Pelican or the well-known car manufacturer Peugeot. Over the years, its design was simplified. The system of identifying family clans also existed in Japan, although in a more minimalist way. This is where the mon emerges, emblematic circles used by aristocratic families that would end up catching on throughout society. The mon would also have an impact on the origins of the first brands in Japan. The Mitsubishi logo, for example, combines the Iwasaki family emblem, the family that founded the appliance brand, and the Yamanouchi, the first to start the company. All of these brands got started at a time when the world was about to change forever. Political, social, economic, and cultural changes that would give rise to logo creation as we know it today. although there are several brands that claim the honor of being the first to register a logo. In the 19th century, the most paradigmatic case is Bass Brewery, a popular English brand. But the Bass logo isn't only important because it was first, but also because of its revolutionary design that made it stand out from other brands for decades. During a time when logos looked like this, Bass got ahead of the competition by putting everything on a red triangle. And it worked. Bass got away from classic aesthetics, proposing an abstract, minimalist, simplified symbol. And not only did the logo sell, it was also incorporated into the works of artists like Picasso and Monet, proving its key role in a society where the barriers between art and business were beginning to shrink. Just like before, with religious symbols, Mason's marks, or family emblems in the 19th century, brands started understanding that with just a few lines and colors, they would conquer the world. This is how the modern history of logotype design began. Discover the rest of the history soon.
Well, I hope that that was a good little start to give you a little background on logo design. I'm most intrigued by how symbolism has really played a big part in that. So the next thing I want to talk about, which is really kind of the starting point of whenever I work on a logo for an organization, is really taking a look at yourself. This is a famous quote from Saul Bass, a graphic designer. Logos are the graphic extension of the internal realities of a company. So you can't really sell yourself out to the world unless you really kind of take a look backwards. And so I think it's a great example of really kind of discovery first. And I would recommend that if you're thinking about doing a logo, or if you have an existing logo that you're wanting to update, that you kind of take the time to kind of look at some of these things. So taking a good look at your business, who are you, is one of the main things that I always start with. It's either, by having a questionnaire with my clients, or just in the discovery phase in our meetings. And these are just a few highlights of things that we discussed, not all of them. Before you move forward, look back at your company history. Who are you? What significant milestones can you think about? That's a great thing to think about in terms of even an image for yourself, or when you're coming up with a description of the company. Even if you're a new company, how did you get where you are? Another thing, which really encompasses what a logo is what's the single most important thing you want to say about your company? It's tough to do, but taking into consideration everything, if you had just a sentence or two to describe to someone about your company, what would that be? Forcing you to kind of simplify things. What kind of personality do you want to convey with your organization? And I have we'll dip into that a little bit in the next slide. What makes you different? What sets you apart from other people? That's a really key thing, not just in logo design, but of course in marketing as well. A bank, for instance, a lot of people think they're all the same, but what do you specialize in that separates you from other banks? What does the competition look like? Always a good thing to look over your shoulder, look forward, and see what other people are doing, even for inspiration. And what you think they're doing that you may not like, so you take note of that. And then, of course, who's your target audience? Who are you trying to speak to? So this is what I was talking about in the previous slide. Another thing that I try to do in discovery is defining the attributes of your brand. Some people already have a pretty good idea, but this kind of helps think about these things. So, on a scale, Do you want to emulate classic or a modern look? Is it a more mature or youthful look? Do you want to be playful with the design or a little bit more sophisticated? Are you trying to emulate that you're an economical organization or that you're a luxury brand? This is more about form, geometric forms or organic forms, abstract or literal. I don't have to fill in all these boxes, but it does help people think about from the onset before you engage with the designer some thoughts. And you may not have the answers to these, and the designer can help you discover those. So here I'm going to kind of go through some examples of some of the logos that I've done that I think kind of emulate some of these defining styles. This first logo is done for Mid-Atlantic Surfaces. They do high-end corporate and residential granite and laminate office spaces, countertops. They do restaurants and bars. One of the things they wanted to emulate was the Mid-Atlantic. So I did this stylized M and then also kind of created this three-dimensional look that they, kind of an architectonic look. This logo here was done for the American Institute of Graphic Arts. We had a studio tour in which the community was invited to tour several advertising and design studios in the Richmond area. And one of the things that I think, one of the stigmas maybe that designers have is that they can be maybe a little bit highbrow. And so I kind of wanted to break that stereotype with this identity and kind of give it a rock concert feel, something fun. Created t-shirts and posters and stickers and just kind of, wave off that super high end thing and have some fun. This was for an event, for a lacrosse event. It was during the July 4th. So I kind of created this Americana look for a firecracker shootout, which was, this is just kind of a one-off design. So I do some of those as well. And this would be what I would call kind of classic modern. This logo here, the MC40, which I did for Philip Morris a while back, their manufacturing center's 40th anniversary. So I came up with the MC40 clean typography and then did a very simplistic illustration of their manufacturing center. This top left one was for one of the clients that I've had for many years called the Better Housing Coalition. They work in the metro area to help low-income communities. And I was honored to be selected as a designer for this. One of the things that I really wanted to emphasize was equality, and then of course community. This is this one on here, the 100 is a sample of kind of a typographic treatment for 100th anniversary for the American Institute of Architects. I wanted something with a lot of motion and it was a celebratory time. This was for a company called Kenmore Envelopes and incorporated kind of their initial K for Kenmore with a visual image of an envelope. And this example on the bottom right is for a company that it's called the Assorted Affair. They would come in and help you sort, your space if you were moving out, or if you just needed help just getting rid of a lot of your clutter. So what I wanted to balance here was organization, but with a little bit of movement. That I know myself, I'm just not the most organized person, probably never will be, but also have some very nice, comforting colors as well. So that's it for some of the samples. Another thing that's key once you've developed your logo or your look is consistency in how you're using your identity across multiple platforms. So I worked for many years with the Virginia Society of the American Institute of Architects, and we had, in a while back, redeveloped the look of our logo. And then this is just showing, across a platform how there's a consistency. A website, this is a postcard on the right. This is a letter header, and a calendar. And if you look at all these things, there's a consistency with the color, the spacing, and I can't emphasize enough when you're developing an identity that you be consistent in how you treat your logo, how you place it, and just try to be very consistent, because that really helps re-emphasize your brand and the position of your organization to the audience. This is another logo that I just recently did for Allegheny Highlands Economic Development Corporation. This was a very exciting project I got to work on. I had some initial thoughts from the customer and from my client that they definitely wanted the mountains in there. They also had a color palette that they wanted to emulate from some existing signage that they did. But other than that, they really wanted something clean, fresh, and modern. So this is the identity that I came up with for them. It emulates kind of the outdoors of the mountains, but then this one mountain, kind of the green, moving forward, advancing economic development. And this segment here, which is also really important, and I try to provide for all the logos that I do for companies, is what's called an identity usage guideline and graphic standards. So, when you have your logo and you need to send it out to have a banner made, or you are getting a sign done, or even any kind of communications, you can share this internally and externally with your vendors or with the people that you work with, so that you're all literally on the same page of how to use the logo. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So I had developed the different orientations of the logo: a vertical orientation, a horizontal orientation. What does identity look like in black only? How does it look black and reverse? And these are the guides, to help if anybody has questions, do's and don'ts, basically. But also, I always feel like, companies should have the freedom to get creative as well. I'm not the design police here, but it is important to have some guidelines. Created a color palette for people to use, and then on all different platforms for print and for digital usage, as well as, a few rules as far as the organization of the colors. And this last piece here in the guidelines, and again, I keep this pretty simple. It's not a huge book, but what is the space around a logo? What is the minimum size that you'd want to have this logo? You should not have it any smaller than 1 inch or 2 inches for horizontal. And touch on the use of typography for your communications. Again, typography can be a challenge too across platforms from Mac to PC. I'm a big fan of using cross-platform TrueType fonts, or Google fonts are great for communications, in that they really work cross-platform, already available not only for print use but for digital use as well. And then this is just an example of color usage, the do's and do nots. Well, that is my presentation on logo design, and have anybody have any additional questions or things, they feel free to ask.
Please, if you've got a question for Stephen, post those in the Q&A. I have a question that I struggle with often is it preferable to, when you have a logo design, have one with a transparent background or have like a white background?
That's a great question. Again, when I go back to the identity thing, you really want your logo to be the most important thing is that it's readable. So a lot of times color behind there and color usage on a transparent, as long as you're using the colors that work and aren't going to obscure them, that's okay. It's really just a matter of if it's readable. And then the white background, I mean, I think that's the default for everything. If you're sending it out to somebody and you don't really know what kind of background you're going to have, I suggest having, a decent amount of white space around it. But again, it kind of depends on the application too. Because I know for video, for example, you would want a transparent background because you don't want, it's visually not as appealing to have that video behind there moving with a white block.
Stephen, I have a question. How many, is there a number of colors you want to stick to, like maybe 3 primary colors, or can you do more, or is it better not to?
Well, I think it really depends on in the discovery phase, because let's say in your industry, I mean, I always kind of move more towards the simpler the best to start. Like, how does this logo work in black? Which is, today we're in a digital world and that's not much of a factor. But the more you add, I guess there's more that you have to consider in terms of exposing your identity out there. So in the case for Allegheny Highlands, those colors were actually used because they were taken from existing signage that they had just developed. And I completely understand them wanting to wink at that, because there was a significant investment made in that tourism signage, or actually the wayfinding signage. So I don't want to say less is more, but generally, if I had to take a survey on data on things that I've done, I've kept my logos generally to 2 colors, sometimes 3, and sometimes 1 is just the best. If you just find that color that, colors can be a very personal thing too. So it's a good question. It can make a huge difference. And
I really like the Allegheny Highlands logo. Thanks for explaining that.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was an honor to work on that, and I'm very proud of that. And what it's hopefully going to do for the region, boost their economic development, and I think they're doing pretty well. I also work with them on a website as well, and how the logo incorporates onto a website. I'm sorry, Sandy, go ahead.
That's okay. Another thing that I'm finding with logos, if it's a high resolution, in some cases, if you're doing like a MailChimp, or you're putting your logo on something as maybe one of your social platforms, and you only have that certain amount of space that you can do it. And if it's very busy and high res, it won't fit because they limit you on that. And I think that's something else. If you're hiring that done for your organization, you may want to think about that in the back of your mind. And when they give you the actual logos, ask for different sizes, I guess.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do provide when I give them their package is not only the guidelines, but what you're talking about, Sandy, is various formats. So formats, for print, formats for social media. There are certain, pixel dimensions that work best. So, whoever you work with should understand that and provide you with, things that are basically drag and drop for you in those different buckets, so to speak. And if they say they don't know how to do that, rethink who you're working with there. But digital is a huge thing too, and it can be frustrating when you're working in some of these, like MailChimp and things like that, to have something that you don't have to scratch your head with.
And one other, I guess, issue or challenge that I have had is if you're using abbreviations like the initials for your organization, But if I'm seeing that on a document or something that's coming through, if it doesn't have what that means, it kind of leaves your logo just out there floating that nobody knows what those initials stand for. I
Yeah.
mean, VCC stands for Virginia Community Capital, like on my,
Right.
but there are those that don't do that, and you're just, what does this have to do with your company? You know?
Yeah. And I think, again, that has a lot to do with, when I talked before about your consistency, one of the key things is if someone can read it and understand who you are, if it's on its own. So if you're going to use a mark, for example, and it's a beautiful mark, and you want to use it because it looks great, you have to quantify it with who you are, either by spelling it out or having the full logo exist somewhere. So that's a great point. That's a great point to make.
Does any of our folks that are joining us have a question? Oh, I just saw one pop up. Would you suggest not using cursive letters?
I guess the question there is, I go back to readability. There are some letters that are, that have that kind of more of what we call a display type, like you're talking about, that can read well. You just have to be really careful with it. I don't rule anything out when I'm developing something. So I hate to say no, don't use it. But if you are going to use it, can you read it? That's the most important thing. And I find, as a designer, it's everywhere I look. I see signage, or I'm in the grocery store. I'm like, oh my God, you can't read it. Anyway, keeping it simple and clean is key. And but that said, doesn't mean you can't have something that's more intricate.
And have you ever had, I guess you didn't want to share your logo with an organization depending on what they're using it for? You like, for example, some large companies, firms, they have logos, but you either have to go through PR or something to get it. And to me, the logo is something that's just like you're building your brand, and the more people that share it, and if it's a good logo, then I would want to share it with whoever wants it.
Yeah, I think that's not becoming as much of a challenge as it used to be, in terms of, well, for example, Facebook is a perfect example. If you Googled Facebook vector logo right now, you could download it in multiple different formats. For somebody who has proprietary laws on their thing, the best route I can recommend is just going direct to their communications department and going that route to get it. And as long as they understand the usage, it shouldn't be a problem. Like you said, it's promoting them. But I do not recommend just grabbing it and using it without consulting that company.
I think you alluded to it earlier, but do you suggest bright colors, or are you also okay with pastel colors when it comes to your logo showing up?
I think that, like I said, it really depends on, we talked about kind of those attributes. If you are a dance company, for example, you might want more light pastel colors. But if you're, drag racing event, you're going to want it to be, in my opinion, more bold and more powerful. So it really just depends on what the attributes are you're trying to convey. I don't rule any colors out. Except, again, that number one thing about readability. I always explore, there's so many different colors to use. Myself personally, in my design, I tend to kind of be more bold, but that's just my style. That's one style of many, but I just feel like, let's get your money's worth. I want it to be readable. I want it to have impact. So
yes, especially if you're going to spend money and have those magnets put on the side of your truck doors. If you're in a service, you want people to be able to read it, especially read your number or your website.
Yeah.
But can they make out now? What do you mean? What is that all about?
Yeah, and that, I mean, again, and that's the major challenge of designing a logo is to have that. That's when everything comes together in a simple way where someone just gets it. And it's a not easy thing to do because you're trying to kind of do something that's intangible, like they mentioned in the video, with an image. Get someone to recognize something, maybe even just by the image itself. So.
Yeah, and it's great. Well, in some cases, if your logo catches the attention and you make it on the news, because I remember several years ago, I think it was ABC News picked up this gentleman. It was in Canada. It was up north, either Canada, Detroit, and he was a plumber. And he had a logo design and had it big that it looked like a big toilet. And him sitting in his truck, it looked like he was sitting on the toilet driving his truck. The toilet was on the outside and he was sitting in the seat with the windows rolled down. So that always, nobody had to assume the type of business that he was in.
Right. I've seen those too with plumbers where that's just the body and then the head, wherever's driving it. I've seen that trick as well. So I did want to mention too, one of the things too that I talk with my clients about first is that, whenever you're using the logo, it's a free ad. It's an ad. And so really, kind of treasure that. Like you're wearing your clothes, like just make sure that when it's out there, you're giving it the best opportunity to shine. So it is, and a logo can go a long way every time it's seen. And I also have this kind of a little bit of a guide for myself. If I would wear that on a cap, take ownership of it that way, then that's one of my touch points when I'm developing something.
Stephen, we've got a question from Walter. What would you estimate low budget for part-time vendor at a farmer's market?
I'd really hate to do any kind of quotations here, but I'm generally under $1,000 for something like that. But I really don't want to get into the finances. It really depends on your reach. Local artwork versus or regional work is going to be a less of a cost than if you're like a national corporation. It's about, if you think about, if you're placing an ad in your local Courier versus the Washington Post in terms of thinking about valuation.
And if you're on real low budget, there's software that you can use. For example, Canva. I'm getting ready, working on the first regional procurement pitch contest that's ever been done, especially in Virginia, to support the new Bristol casino. Virginia's first casino is now in Bristol. And I just went to Canva, and they do have some templates, and you can get some ideas that you can use and create your own logo. That's very low budget, and Canva is free. You can't get any better than that. And I'm sure there's probably some others, but you go back to having somebody like Stephen that has the experience over 30 years and how you're designing that plays a lot into if you have an effective logo or not. But if you're on low budget, that's an option. Canva, Canva, and I have used it for that just real recently.
I would like to say too, I try to work within my clients' budgets reasonably, but there is a valuation to what I bring, and there it really just depends. So I don't ever shut the door on anyone. I'm always looking at what their needs are. So.
And is it okay to share your phone number or your email address, how they can get up with you?
Absolutely. My web address is longstaffcreative.com, and you can certainly share that information. My email is probably the best way to get me, which is design@longstaffcreative.com, and I could share that with you later, Sandy, if you needed it. I think you obviously have it.
I already have it, but I hope that helps you, Walter, in making that decision. And it's worth, as we say on the farm, thumping tires on it. Is talk to Stephen and nothing venture, nothing gain. And if you're going to do it, you want to do it right, because when you start working with a brand, it's so hard to change it once you get into it, after you've got letterhead and invoices and business cards and website and everything. You want to do it right the first time.
Yeah. And, think about the brands that we shared in that video. Coca-Cola has not changed. It is, they stuck with it. I mean, a lot of clients, the Pepsi's changed, but they've been chasing Coke, right? But Coke is, for whatever reason, the one. And I agree, like, find something and stick with it. And even if you're going to update it, make a wink back, because you've invested this time and energy in building your brand. And unless things are going super south and your brand isn't working at all, try to, work with what you've established. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say.
Yes. Nita, do you have anything?
Well, one thing I was going to ask, if you already have a logo and you're thinking about rebranding it or getting a new vision on it, would you work with the company or the organization
Absolutely.
just to get their thoughts?
Absolutely. I consult with people on that all the time.
Okay.
I'm currently working with Prince George County for their Department of Tourism. They're working with their chamber and the Hopewell, I think it's Hopewell Prince George Tourism Department, but they're now trying to launch something for themselves, because they understand the value of, letting people know who they are and that they have, and so that's been exciting. So yeah, absolutely. I've done that a lot. I've had people say, I need this updated, or I want something new. So it really just depends.
I'd be interested to see what that logo is going to look like, what you're working with. So
yeah, I'm excited. We're in the process. It is a process, and I will tell you, it's, I'll be honest, I'm on my third round of development on this, because it's just getting to where people, there's a lot of people involved to the point where they're ready to let it go. So the more involved, obviously, the longer it takes, but it is a process, and we'll get there.
I'm sure as a chamber, Nita can feel your pain quite a bit to get everybody happy with it, because nobody likes change. But
well, it's tough, because if you're really have been with an organization a long time, hopefully you're passionate about that. And I just had this discussion today with the client, saying, try not to be insular in your discovery of your identity, because you're actually speaking to, you look outward, don't look inward. How are people going to perceive you, even though you may not like green? Survey says green. So you got to take that into consideration. And it's not easy. Some people put their foot down, and that's that. And you just have to kind of roll with it. But I have been telling my clients to just really look at what you think, people how they would perceive it.
great. Well, Stephen, I really thank you for doing this today. We've been doing this almost 10 years, and we could not do it without folks like yourself sharing your expertise and your, of course, knowledge. That's why it's called New Knowledge.
Yes.
And doing this on your time, and putting a presentation together just doesn't. You don't sit down and do it in 2 minutes. At least I don't, because you're trying to tell a story. So thank you so much for doing that. And we may yell at you again. You did such a good job to do another session, and it could be on rebranding, whatever, if you'd like to do something like that. But I hope for those that are joining us today that you learned some good tips before you make your investment, and gives you some ideas. We do have our next session coming up is on October the 5th. It will be on fresh food financing programs. And actually, my colleague, Lauren DeSabio with Virginia Community Capital, Lauren is our guru. She knows all about food financing. And it's hard to believe that we live in this day and time, especially in Virginia, that we do have communities that do not have access to fresh foods. So there's some great programs out there and resources and financing to help you. So if you can, come and join us on October the 5th for our Fresh Food Financing Program. And as I noted at the beginning, this session is being recorded and will be available on the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator's Facebook page. The Chamber of Commerce also shares a link, and it will also be on our YouTube channel, New Knowledge, where you can go find that, as well as probably 170 to 180 other workshops that we've done since we started filming them, I think, in 2015. Time flies when you're having fun. But we hope that this has helped you and that you will join us again. And again, Stephen, thank you. At least we didn't make you drive.
Oh, no, that's cool. I'm all for the drive. I like getting out. And
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody, and I hope to see you again in a couple weeks.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.